The Puppet, one of the most misunderstood characters in FNAF, always looking to protect the innocent and yet may have caused more torment than any other character in the series. With every good deed it carried out, there were grave mistakes hidden beneath. Where did the Puppet go wrong? The Puppet's first appearance was in FNAF 2, being a unique animatronic that may have run the prize counter at the second Freddy Fazbear's Pizza. At the first location, he acted as a sort of security system, keeping track of the children and making sure they didn't leave the restaurant unattended. Unlike the other animatronics of FNAF 2, the Puppet doesn't start the night off moving around. This animatronic is contained within a music box, unable to escape unless let out by the player. In the minigame Take Cake to the Children, we see Freddy Fazbear bringing cake to a group of impatient children as another child stands outside looking in through a window and crying. As Freddy continues to serve cake, a car approaches the stranded child and the purple guy gets out, causing the child to temporarily stop crying. However, it isn't long before the child begins crying again, with their eyes widening dramatically until they turn into a corpse, and the purple guy gets back in his car and leaves. The minigame ends with the Puppet's jump scare, hinting that this event is somehow linked to the Puppet. Later in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Simulator, we get a look at a new minigame, showing the same incident from a different perspective and in more detail. This time, we are shown that the child standing outside is a girl, contrary to what we know from the FNAF 2 minigame, which tells us to save him. Regardless, we know that this character is the same person and that her gender has simply been retconned. From this new perspective, we learn that the Puppet is present, tasked with preventing a child with a green wristband from exiting the restaurant. Over the course of 3 occasions, perhaps taking place in one or over multiple days, the Puppet peers out from a large wrapped present looking for this child. Several children come and go during the first 2 instances, but none of them are wearing the wristband the Puppet is looking for. We see a few children sporting blue, at least one wearing pink, and another few with orange. During the final instance, the Puppet's box is covered, making it impossible for it to identify its target. While the Puppet is stuck, we can see a group of children looking out the window at a girl who is shown wearing a green wristband. The children watch as the girl stands in the rain frowning, and they run off as she bangs on the glass, pleading to be let inside. As the Puppet frees itself from its box, the child outside the window slowly fades away, disappearing into the night. The Puppet, having failed its objective, follows the child outside, hoping to redeem itself. By the time it reaches the girl, it's too late. The Puppet collapses, having undergone severe rain damage, and its rigid shell settles beside the child, looking at her and realizing what it had let happen. We later find out that this girl is Charlie Emily, Henry Emily's daughter. Charlie didn't ask for this, and the Puppet didn't intend on it, but as the two of them laid lifeless next to each other in the alley outside of Fredbear's, something unexpected happened. The Puppet awakened. In her new form, Charlie maintained most of her awareness. As stated in Ultimate Custom Night, the others are like animals, but I am very aware.
The others are like animals, but I am very aware.
This explains why the Puppet seems to garner very little resentment and aims to help the other animatronics. Although the FNAF 2 end-of-night cutscenes are referred to as hallucinations or dreams, the fact that we see the Puppet staring into Freddy's eyes in the post-Night 4 cinematic is symbolic of her consciousness. If we take this scene to be canon, we can use the Puppet's inherent perception to explain why the Freddy mask trick doesn't work on it. The Puppet gave life to the original animatronics, and it's much more aware than the others. It would be very keen to the souls inhabiting the suits, being able to easily discern that Jeremy Fitzgerald is not one of them. As mentioned earlier, the Puppet is unique from the other animatronics we see in FNAF 2. It was possessed prior to any of the other animatronics. This is evident because in the Security Puppet minigame, the Puppet doesn't have tears streaking down its face until it collapses in the alley beside Charlie, where we know it reanimates with her consciousness inside it. Every time we see the Puppet after this, it has its signature tear streaks. In the minigame Save Them, the Puppet moves around Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, being too slow to save 5 children from William. Based on Henry's description of her in Freddy Fazbear's Pizza Simulator, we know that it's in Charlie's nature to protect the innocent.
My daughter, if you can hear me, I knew you would return as well. It's in your nature to protect the innocent.
the puppet on its own would have no desire to save these children from William. Its directive was simply to stop children from leaving the restaurant unattended. That being said, Charlie's consciousness must have been inside the puppet at this point. In the minigame Give Gifts Give Life, we see the puppet giving gifts to 4 children before giving them life by putting them into animatronic suits. These suits, having been given life, become the original animatronics from FNAF 1, previously known as the withered animatronics from FNAF 2. Aside from its jump scare in FNAF 2, we never hear of the puppet attacking anyone. We know that the other animatronics act sort of aggressive towards the staff, as stated by Phone Guy, but the puppet does not share this hostility. It could be questioned whether or not the puppet comes out during the day, since we see it confined to its box at night, but it's implied through Phone Guy's dialogue that it is around during the day, when he says, "I never liked that puppet thing. It's always thinking, and it can go anywhere."
I'll be honest, I never liked that puppet thing. It's always thinking, and it can go anywhere.
Phone Guy seems to have experience dealing with the puppet, and we know he was once a security guard based on his dialogue in FNAF 1, when he says, "I actually worked in that office before you. I'm finishing up my last week now, as a matter of fact."
I actually worked in that office before you. I'm finishing up my last week now, as a matter of fact.
Since we are the night guard all week, and Phone Guy claims to be simultaneously finishing up his last week, he would have to be on a different schedule than the player, making him most likely the guard on the day shift. In FNAF 2, Phone Guy reluctantly mentions the puppet in his nights 1 and 2 phone calls, hinting that it scares him. He says, "I'll be honest, I never liked that puppet thing. It's always thinking, and it can go anywhere." Both of these attributes describe a possessed animatronic, being able to move around the restaurant unnaturally and having complex thoughts that an animatronic wouldn't normally have. It is also suggested that the toy animatronics don't start the game possessed, and rather become possessed as the game progresses. This is implied when Phone Guy mentions that the animatronics likely move around because they are looking for children to entertain and they were never given a proper night mode. A few nights later he adds, "Someone may have tampered with their facial recognition systems, we're not sure, but the characters have been acting very unusual, almost aggressive towards the staff." This implies that the animatronics have become possessed, and is further backed by another quote from Phone Guy during the night 6 phone call, when he says, "Someone used one of the suits. We had a spare in the back, a yellow one. Someone used it. Now none of them are acting right." This indicates that William Afton used an animatronic suit to commit murders in the restaurant, with the souls of his victims coming to inhabit the animatronics. One of the interesting differences between the original animatronics and the puppet is how they are possessed. We know that the original animatronics have the bodies of their spirits stuffed inside their suits. In a newspaper clipping that has a chance of replacing a poster in FNAF 1, we learn that parents were noticing blood and mucus in the eyes and mouths of the animatronics, comparing them to reanimated carcasses. The puppet, however, is unlikely to fit that description. We see the puppet short circuit in front of Charlie, so unless someone else had come along and dropped her down into its frame, she never would have entered the puppet. Furthermore, the puppet is far more slender than the other animatronics. It's unlikely that she could even fit inside at all. So if Charlie never inhabited the puppet's suit, how did she come to possess it? In the Fazbear Frights books, we learn that agony can be combined with some kind of intelligence to create physical movement. Phineas Taggart does several experiments on agony and says, "My work is focused on my hypothesis that you can take a saturation of agony, combine it with any intelligence, even an artificial one, and they will combine to transmute the energy of emotion into the energy of physical action." Taggart uses this basis to justify haunted objects that originate from the site of a tragedy. Having first been outcast by a group of her peers and then killed by one of her father's affiliates, Charlie Emily certainly checks the first box. After all, Phineas Taggart claims that extreme negative emotions have a stronger impact on their environment. Now pair that with the artificial intelligence of the puppet, and we can begin to understand its story. Charlie Emily died tragically. It was the puppet's task to protect her, and he failed. His first mistake, however, was not letting her die. After Charlie died unbeknownst to him, the puppet follows her outside to complete his objective of protecting her, hoping to bring her back inside. His first mistake was breaking down next to her, creating the grounds for agony to take effect. His presence alone was enough to resurrect Charlie in an unnatural way. After attaching itself to Charlie's soul, the puppet's directive of protecting the innocent was reinforced. Even though we see Charlie crying in the Take Cake to the Children minigame, I believe the tears we see on the puppet's face originate from the tears it formed when it was crawling to her in the alley outside of Fredbear's. As it begins to come apart in the rain, the puppet starts to accumulate tear-like marks under its eyes, and with the tone of the minigame, it makes sense that the sadness of both Charlie and the puppet would combine to form the basis of its new persona. Charlie, showing empathy for the children in the first MCI, decides to do what had been done for her the night she lost herself to William Afton, give back what he had taken from them. By restoring the children's viability, the puppet ignorantly held their souls in a place between the mortal and the spiritual planes. Yes, the puppet allowed the children to live again, but with what quality of life? The children now harbor anger and resentment, unable to move on as they may have if they had been left to rest in peace. The puppet's intentions were pure and selfless, and yet somehow inconsiderate. Henry describes the MCI children as trapped in prisons of his making, but he is hardly the one responsible for what happened to them. William, of course, is responsible for their deaths and holds the most fault for what happened to them. But the puppet is the one that resurrected them and condemned them to haunt violent animatronic suits for decades. What William had done was bad enough, and perhaps the children could be at peace if they were left undisturbed. But the puppet, aiming to give them back their lives, unknowingly caused them more torment than they had previously endured. As Henry puts it, their souls were now trapped in prisons, jailed by the puppet. In the insanity ending of FNAF 6, Henry says, "I don't know how those tiny breaths of life came to inhabit those machines, but they will never find rest now." Henry states that he doesn't know that the puppet was responsible for giving these kids new life, but he knows that under these circumstances they will never be at peace. In his true ending speech, Henry says, "And to you monsters trapped in the corridors, be still and give up your spirits. They don't belong to you." Since being given life again, the spirits have been retained by the animatronics they inhabit, unable to gain control. The puppet is a character whose intentions were always pure. Its programming was to guard the vulnerable. Charlie's nature was to protect the innocent. The puppet never had any ill intent. It wanted to give back what William had taken from those poor children, the same way it both gave and received life from Charlie. In doing this, it unknowingly prevented them from finding peace. In FNAF 3's good ending, we see the puppet working with the souls of the original animatronics to recreate the day William had taken from all of them, their happiest day. In this minigame, the spirits celebrate a melancholy party before sharing a cake, symbolic of the happiness that was taken from them. After receiving their cake, the animatronic masks fall to the ground and their spirits are set free, having moved on from their grief. In this way, the puppet could have given life to the children in order to later give them their peace. This ending isn't canon, but like the end of night cutscenes in FNAF 2, I still believe they help us to understand the characters in the series. During the true ending in FNAF 6, Henry speaks to Charlie saying, "It's time to rest, for you and for those you have carried in your arms." Henry seems to view the puppet's actions as positive rather than negative. The puppet did allow William's victims to live again. Henry says, "For most of you, I believe there is peace and perhaps more waiting for you after the smoke clears." After all of the terrible things the animatronics have done, from murdering night guards to torturing William Afton, Henry still believes that they can find peace. The spirits of the MCI are not to blame for their violence and aggression. It's the animatronics that reserve that title. Specifically, one of them. What's going on, BonSwootch here? I just wanted to take another minute and thank you all for all of the support I've been receiving. My last theory is currently at 36,000 views, which is just amazing to me. Since then, I've also gained hundreds of subscribers and I'm now sitting at around 530. I just want to always make sure that I share my appreciation so that everyone knows that it really means a lot to me. Anyways, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and I'll be responding to comments until next weekend when I post my next video. Thank you all so much.